Hi, I'm Kelly. Today's story is a strange one from the Taiwanese countryside. People say cities are cold and indifferent. But have you ever been to a village so quiet? It feels like even the water is watching you. This is what happened after a father and his son moved back into an old family home. I used to think life would be more peaceful if a city person like me moved to the countryside. Turns out, I was wrong. I'm a documentary filmmaker. Most of my work focuses on local culture and folk beliefs, but I've grown tired of it over the years. After my wife passed away, I didn't want my son growing up in a cold apartment in the city. Coincidentally, my grandfather's old house was sitting empty in a village I hadn't visited in years. So I thought, why not go live there for a while? I could shoot something fresh, maybe a documentary on rural legends. There's a pond in the center of that village. The surface is always a shiny, bottomless black. People say no one ever keeps fish in that pond, not even for good luck, because the fish, they say, can talk. I laughed it off and made a note in my project proposal. Sounded like a good story. But after moving in, things started to feel off. One evening, I saw my son, Xiao Hai, staring out at the pond, lost in thought. I started filming him from behind, thinking it'd be a nice shot of him adjusting to our new life. When I walked over to him, he said,
"Daddy, there's a kid in the water who looks just like me. He's watching me."
I chuckled, thought he was telling stories. But then he added seriously,
"He's wearing the same clothes as me, but they're wet, stuck to his body."
I looked at the pond. The surface was still as plastic wrap, with only a few reeds by the bank. Nothing else. I asked if maybe it was just his reflection. He replied,
"Reflections don't blink."
That night, a small puddle of water appeared by the edge of our bedroom floor. I thought Xiao Hai had wet the bed, but the sheets were dry. His pajamas were dry. Then that puddle started to smell, mildewy, like a towel that had never properly dried. I leaned in and realized I'd smelled it before. When I was a kid, I nearly fell into that very pond. An old woman in the village pulled me out and wiped me down. The towel she used smelled exactly like this. Things got weirder. Xiao Hai started sleep-talking, whispering things I couldn't understand. Sometimes it was just nonsense like do-do-do. But one early morning, he suddenly sat up in bed and stared at the door. He said,
"Daddy, which one are you going to take home?"
My heart nearly stopped. I jumped up and turned on the light, but he was already lying back down like nothing happened. That's when I decided I'd film a documentary just about this pond. I interviewed a few elders in the village, and I kept hearing the same thing. There's a white cloth pressed down at the bottom of that pond. If someone moves it, they'll get swapped. Some people believe that cloth is like a spiritual seal, placed over the remains of someone who drowned, or over a paper doll, or even an urn. One man told me a child went missing decades ago. All they ever found was his clothes floating at the edge of the pond. The body was never recovered. The cloth, he said, covers the exit. Exit? I asked. He just shook his head. I didn't believe in that kind of thing. But the more unbelievable it sounded, the more I felt I had to dive in and see for myself. Maybe I'd catch something worth submitting to a film festival. That morning, I asked a neighbor to watch Xiao Hai while I geared up and dove into the pond. The water was colder than I expected. Visibility was terrible. I couldn't see the bottom. Then, my fingers brushed against something soft and slippery, like fabric. I tried to pull it up, but it wouldn't budge. Something was holding it down. I surfaced to catch my breath. But as I dove again, I thought I saw another figure under the water, just out of reach. I didn't film anything. I gave up. That night, Xiao Hai had his bath and put on a new shirt I had picked for him, one with a bright yellow truck on the front. But before bed, I saw him asleep, wearing the blue checkered shirt from the day before. I had washed that one. It was still hanging damp in the bathroom. I looked at his face. Something was off. Not completely different, just slightly wrong. His eyelashes weren't as curled. He was missing one front tooth. The mole on his chin was gone. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and stared at me. Then he smiled. "Daddy," he said, "I really love it here." In that moment, I honestly wasn't sure if the child in front of me was still my son. The next day, I packed our bags and left the village. I didn't tell anyone why. We live in the city now. Life is normal. He goes to school, sings nursery rhymes, makes friends. But sometimes, when he's in the bath, I can't help but check his back. There's a small patch of skin, wrinkled, like it's been soaked in water for too long. Just that one patch. And it never dries. People say something weird happened in this village. Could you talk about it a bit?
Our village isn't all that special, really. Too much land, not enough people. All the young folks left long ago, and now only a handful of elders remain, quietly watching over the old houses. You're asking about the pond? Yeah, city folks like you always do. You've probably heard the usual weird stuff, like how the fish in the pond can talk or how the pond swaps people. I'm not saying I believe all of it, but there's one thing I've never told anyone before. And since you're still sitting here this late, maybe you'd like to hear it. It was around 3 years ago. A man from Taipei moved back here with his kid, said his grandfather had left him an old house. He planned to stay for a while and mentioned he was a documentary filmmaker, interested in capturing the local legends on film. At first, he seemed decent, polite. He'd take his son, Xiao Hai, I think his name was, to the shop to buy candy. The boy was about the same age as my grandson, a good kid, always called people uncle or sir when he saw them. But something started to feel off, and it didn't take long. About a week after they moved in, I was riding past the pond on my scooter one evening. It had just rained. The sky was still dim, not yet dark, but the pond water looked unusually black. That's when I saw Xiao Hai standing barefoot at the edge, his feet sunk into the wet mud. He didn't move, just stood there like he was waiting for someone. I called out to him. He turned around and smiled. But it wasn't the kind of smile you expect from a kid. It was too quiet, too still, like something cut out of a photo and stuck onto his face. His dad found out and came around to apologize later. Said the boy sometimes sleepwalked and hoped we wouldn't be too disturbed. But that confused me, because I'm certain it was around 5 in the afternoon, not night. Why would he be sleepwalking in the early evening? And then, their house started to smell. Not like garbage, but like damp, moldy cloth. That sour smell you get from old towels that never dry properly. You could smell it just walking past their outer wall. There were times I thought I heard voices from inside, soft ones. Not like a father talking to his son, more like someone having a quiet phone conversation. But it wasn't one voice, it was two, taking turns, like they were talking back and forth. One night, a villager named Ah Ching came home drunk and took the wrong path back. He passed by the pond and told me the next day. There was a kid's voice in the water. It asked me, "Which one are you taking back?" I told him he was probably just drunk, but he shook his head, said it wasn't a hallucination. The voice was right next to his ear, clear and close. You want to know the creepiest part? That family didn't even last a full month. They left in a hurry, so fast they didn't even take the towel hanging on their balcony. I went by their house after they'd gone. The window had been left open, and the wind kept slapping that towel against the wall. It was dripping water. The strange thing was, it hadn't rained that day. And on the morning they left, someone noticed something floating in the pond. It was a pair of kids' shoes, bright yellow with cartoon prints. I remember them clearly. I'd seen Xiaohai wearing them before. I never asked. I didn't want to know. But ever since then, I've taken the long way around. I never passed that pond again.
That's the end of today's story. Have you ever heard a story like this? Or met someone who didn't quite feel the same? Leave me a comment and let me know. Or maybe you've just never noticed that the person beside you isn't really the same anymore. Like the story? Want more creepy tales like this? Hit like, subscribe, and share. It really helps the channel grow.